Hello everyone, I'm Paul Stevens, editor of Short Term Rentals, and welcome to this latest webinar of our RockStrz series on the great outdoors, breaking new grounds in the short-term rental sector. Before we kick things off, we have a very short video from our series sponsor, Nuki. And we're also delighted to highlight our session sponsor, Point Central, which you can see on the screen now. Point Central is a leading provider of smart home solutions for property managers and recently won a Shorties Award for Best Home Automation Solution or Product. So in terms of webinar guidelines, please keep your sound on mute and your camera off if you're not speaking. I'm being ably assisted by my colleagues Justin and Flor today. You can see all the details in the chat throughout this webinar. Please do post any questions you have to any of our speakers today, and a recording will be sent around to everyone after the session. It's me, Paul Stevens, editor of Short Term Rentals. And let me introduce our rock stars today. We're going to start with Jon from RVShare. Take it away, Jon.
Thanks for having me on, Paul. I'm Jon Gray. I'm the CEO of RVShare. RVShare does basically similarly to what VRBO or Airbnb do in the short-term rentals category for RVs. We connect people who have an RV with someone who's looking to go on an RV trip. And we're a US focused business today. Business has been around since about 2013 and has booked more than 2 million nights on our platform so far.
Thank you very much, Jon. And Kate, please take it away.
Hi there. I'm the founder of Morel & Co, which is a British-based company designing and producing tree houses and cabins. I've worked in the glamping sector for just over 11 years. And hospitality for longer than I want to admit to on this video. And I consult internationally, but my treehouse business is based here in the UK.
Thank you, Kate. Delighted to have you on the panel. And next we have Jason from Hsiao Investments. Jason.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Jason Hsiao. I am the managing director for Hsiao Investments. We are essentially a private equity fund that opportunistic. We do have a few investments in the hospitality, travel and leisure space. We built a food hall. We're working on a boutique hotel as well and some vacation rental properties as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jason. And last but not least, Sarah from the Dyrt.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I am Sarah Smith, the founder of the Dyrt. The easiest way to think of the Dyrt is Yelp or TripAdvisor for camping, specifically solving the problem that it's really hard to find a campground online where it used to be because you couldn't see what you were getting. You wanted to know that site 2 was down by the river and site 7 was up by the highway noise. And through our community, we've built this amazing resource to help people find campgrounds. And we started back in 2013.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So let me just take you through a couple of context slides for this discussion. So we've got news of several pieces of investment in the likes of HipCamp and Yoke, as we can see. And intriguingly, seeing as we have Jon on the session today, we have a $100 million investment in RVShare. So we'll be touching on that a bit later. Yeah, next slide. And then feel free also to check out my 2021 predictions piece, a little plug there, back from December, in which I discussed the RV and tiny homes trends, the rise of domestic and regenerative travel, and much, much more. So please do get a chance to read that if you can. So let's kick off today's conversation. I'm going to start off with Kate on this one, because I want to look at how we've seen COVID as actually leading travellers to consider their travel behaviours and responsible consumption. So Kate, from your glamping background, you know, what do you believe sets this segment apart from other hospitality segments? What do you think why do you think guests now are turning to this over some others? Oh, I think you're on mute, Kate. Kate, sorry.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, I get used to this technology, just as probably we're ending the video. Yeah, I think it's quite obvious, really, in that, you know, well, certainly here in the UK, there's been a lot of lockdowns. We've been confined to our houses, to our own gardens or flats or what have you. I think you know, at the same time, we've seen how nature has been able to flourish a little bit more because of the lack of pollution and transport and traffic that we've been putting out there around the world. And I think now that we are actually allowed to go out and do things, we really do want to re-engage with the natural world because we're actually part of it. You know, we've become quite disassociated from it, I think, certainly over the last century, industrial revolutions and cars and urbanization and things like that. And I think it's basic human nature, honestly. That's bottom line. I think we're part of nature. We want to be part of it. And I think it affects us when we're not. So I think it's just given us all a little bit of a wake-up call.
I think one of the words that was quite common across the thread when we were talking was all about the intangibles of glamping. I mean, how do you think COVID, etc., has you know, actually impacted the global sector, and maybe what do you hope will come out of this period? I hope genuinely that more people will engage with nature in a responsible way, that there isn't a whole bunch of greenwashing that comes as a result of it. You know, I was at a university alumni conference some years ago, and where the CEO said that a lot of people fill out surveys indicating that they would spend more for a sustainable holiday, that they want to take a sustainable holiday, and because they know that's what they're supposed to be ticking. But whether or not, you know, when the offers start, you know, especially, you know, you go into a supermarket, you see a buy one, get one free offer. You know, where are people's principles then? Do they actually stick to the organic free range product, or do they think, oh, to hell with it, nobody's looking, I'll just buy this? So you know, I'm kind of hoping that it's a genuine shift towards a more sustainable travel future for all of us, for the planet's sake, really. That's what I'm hoping will happen. Thank you,
as a result.
I'd love to get the US perspective on it. So Sarah, I mean, you've had a busy year with the Dyrt as well. I see that you've, you know, launched your pro platform as well, providing discounts for campgrounds. What do you think particularly why have campgrounds, why and how do you think campgrounds have grown in popularity during this time? Are there particular demographics that you think it caters to?
Yeah, those are good questions. I think, you know, obviously during COVID, you were limited in what you could do. We all were limited in what we could do. So doing what we could do, which was get outside and be socially distanced, but still even perhaps maybe be a bit social, was a treat, to be able to be with people, but be outside and be safe. We surveyed our community, and we found out that 71% of people plan to travel camp, 71% more even this year than they did last year. So I don't think it's going anywhere. But I think, you know, being able to be socially distant during COVID. And then I do think there's something to what Kate's saying about wanting to connect with nature more again, and be a part of nature, which I think maybe we had just all taken for granted earlier. And then when you see what the pause did to nature and the pollution going down, and you know, the good things that came out of this, I think it makes you appreciate nature more. Definitely,
and the 71% as well. It's quite a startling statistic. Now, I think we said in our previous conversation that there's now 40,000 campsites on your platform. now? I mean,
yeah, it's interesting. We have about, I think, 45,000 campgrounds listed on our platform, and that's anything from a private RV resort to a campground in a national forest or a state park, even to these private landowners who list their property on different platforms are all coming to the Dyrt to list they just want to list wherever they can. So we're seeing glamping type places, all sorts of different sorts of campgrounds listed. But another interesting aspect of the Dyrt, which is part of the Dyrt Pro, are map layers. So in the United States, there's certain national land that you can camp on, Bureau of Land Management, National Forest land, where you can disperse camp, meaning you're not at a campground, and making sure that's available to people and people understand how they can do that really opens up the possibilities of camping not only at campgrounds.
Fantastic. I'd love to get Jon's perspective as well, because this is the first webinar that we've done on any type of motorhomes, or I know you don't like the term mobile homes as well, but RVs, and we see this as a huge market now. So for our audience, what do you think is most misunderstood about this category?
Yeah, I think, look, I wanted to add one point on the COVID impacts to the category, which I would say COVID didn't start new trends. It just accelerated trends that were already underway. So we saw a couple of trends that have helped to build this category. One is that as the US became more urban, people wanted to take their vacations outside of cities. They wanted to reconnect with nature. They wanted to, get out and experience the outdoors, and to do that with their group or family. And we saw in the pandemic that accelerated because it was one of the best ways to travel. You look at RV travel and camping, one of the things that's true about them is that there is a massive audience for them already. Something like 50 million American households already camp, and people love doing it. So like if you look at the net promoter scores in this category, they're incredibly high. You look at our 5-star reviews on our platform, 93% 5-star reviews. People, once they go out and experience the outdoors with their families, it's an amazing experience. They want to come back and do it year after year. Last year, things like taking an air conditioner with you to go camping in an RV, taking a bathroom, taking a kitchen, all became just much better cast in the light of a pandemic. They were always good, but when you couldn't go around other people and you were afraid to go in a gas station, they became incredibly good. So that is just a trend we've kind of seen accelerate. It was already there. This was already a high growth category. It just grew much, much faster last year. The other thing that we've seen, and that I think is an important one, is we talk about sustainability. We are sitting on the cusp of one of the biggest opportunities our generation could possibly have to impact sustainability. And that's by moving to more of a work from anywhere, work from home workforce. I mean, one of the biggest things we can do to cut carbon emissions and everything else is stop commuting. And I think many companies have found that they get just as much work done if they have a remote workforce, and that it's a lot cheaper for them to get that work done, not to mention the carbon emission benefits. That move is another one that was kind of already underway, but accelerated during the pandemic, and has made it to where I think many employers and a lot of educational institutions have made engaging with them far more flexible. That is a long-term boon for the travel and hospitality industry, because people are going to have more flexible time to go on trips. Shoulder seasons are going to open up. I think you'll see more trips per traveler, and potentially an expansion in travel budgets, but definitely people more focused on value because they have the same budget and are looking to go on more trips. And those are trends that I think have been, emerging for quite a while and continue to. And those of us who are in the camping, glamping, RV, outdoor travel space are very well positioned to capitalize on the fact that the choice we're bringing to people is one that they're very keen to have now.
And you think that this is something that's being sort of more widely acknowledged really within hospitality, the RV rental category?
I mean, absolutely. I think you're seeing far more people do it. I think if you'd have gone back pre-pandemic, it was a niche discussion around camping. Even though a lot of people did it, it wasn't something that people who hadn't done it before really considered. Now it's something that people consider. If you're jotting down your list of summer family vacation ideas, camping's usually on the list. And, oftentimes camping becomes much more palatable for people who are less willing to rough it if it includes an air conditioner, a kitchen, and a bathroom, which is kind of where RVing comes in. I compare it, and this is a short-term rentals discussion. So my career prior to RVShare was, from the very early days at the start of HomeAway on through its sale to Expedia. And the evolution of this category is eerily similar in that you have a sophistication of the supply base that has kind of started and is now coming along. You have demand starting in kind of a niche and expanding into more mainstream travel as we've gone along. And, it's been a fun ride to see that. And I think the big winner in all of this is the traveling public, in that there's more options available to them to have a wonderful family vacation.
It's interesting that you mentioned about niche, because the last question we're going to come to will all be about whether this outdoor sector is now turning mainstream. So we will return to that point. We'll come to Jason next, because we've got an investor on our panel here. So, you've heard our three other panelists talking about different travel behaviours and trends that they've noticed. How are you noticing travel behaviours change since the start of the pandemic, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the same what other folks have touched on already. For us, we try to form investment thesis around actual data and also both primary and secondary. So, some of it you do have to caution you're not in an echo chamber or confirmation bias type of things. But I did notice a lot more of my friends, they're taking RVs out, buying RVs, my parents included. And while they're buying RVs, just typically what I do, I start a small talk with the dealership and ask them, okay, how many do you guys normally sell in a month? And they said average, 16, 17 RVs. And this is about a year ago. So I asked them, okay, well, what did you guys sell in May and June? And they said, well, in May we did 55 RVs. And in June we're on trajectory for, I think they said 62, 63. And then after that, they're sold out until until December, because Winnebago and all these companies, they just couldn't produce them fast enough. So yeah, it's a lot of this, adoption by necessity. We still want to travel, we still want to have fun, but not a lot of people want to get on a plane or be on a cruise ship, be stuck on it in a tiny little box. And a lot of it, I would say, similar to what Jon said, it accelerated that adoption that was already kind of in play. There's in the US, there's a lot of boomers that are near retirement age, and they have a lot more time to travel. They want to hit up multiple spots instead of boarding an hour flight for multiple times. And a lot of people, they get to try RV that they never would have otherwise. And granted, some people will not, this will not be their go-to mode of transportation, but, I think it fits into the overall theme in other consumer experiences in terms of food or apparel, is that, there's this kind of rejection of what big boxes, big companies, one size fits all approach, whether it's for sustainability or you just want to have a more unique experience. And let's be honest, some people like that for their Instagrams, for their friends to show off. I think it just all coming together that, people get to see and try for themselves if RVing is good for them. Like I said, you can hit up a lot of multiple spots. You can be out with nature. You can take a dog with you or your pets with you. You don't have to check them in a little crate underneath the belly of the airplane. So,
and you think this traveler mindset is going to continue after the pandemic as well, both in terms of where they're traveling and how they're getting there?
So I'll take a little bit more balanced view on that. I mean, I think yes, the adoption, or it will accelerate, but similar to a lot of things, I do want to caution people to, kind of the hype cycle. We see it all the time, Bitcoin, whatever, stock markets. There's this super high acceleration. It will kind of cool or temper off. But, the longer term, I do think it will grow. So, I mean, I don't think everybody's going to be RVing forever, ever. They're just not going to take a flight at all. I think we do have to be cautious of this post-COVID reversal. I mean, Zoom is nice, it is convenient, but given the choice, I think a lot of folks would still prefer to meet face-to-face, belly-to-belly. So
let's get Jon's thoughts on that, because
I mean, certainly right that the industry has taken a huge step forward, and that sort of growth can't be expected into the long term. Obviously, I don't think there's any disagreement around that. But I will say that once cars were invented, nobody was pining to go back to riding horses. I mean, once you've given someone choice, they're going to expect that choice. And for this industry, I think to be relevant and to grow in mainstream travel for a long time, all it needs to be is part of the consideration set. I mean, if you think about the way people, have road tripped previously, they're going from hotel to hotel. That's a suboptimal way to road trip when you could instead do it by RV, for example. If you're going to a national park and you're staying 50 minutes away at the nearest hotel instead of staying in the park under the stars, you're kind of doing it wrong. And I think by exposing the incremental millions of people who have camped, during this pandemic and now, hopefully coming out of it, will continue to, I think you're going to be at the table to make decisions for mainstream travel going forward. And I think that is the thing that kind of builds the space. When we surveyed, and we did a survey a while back with Focusrite, and it said that actually more people are likely to RV post-pandemic than were during the pandemic. And I think what we're forgetting is a lot of people have traveled, and many of them have done so by camping, but there's a lot of people who haven't traveled at all, who are completely on the bench and who are going to come back to travel in a way that's a bit easier and lower risk or lower perceived risk for them by, getting out to outdoor travel first. And that's going to create the kind of next wave of people who are becoming exposed to this industry. So I guess my high level reaction is completely agree that it's going to slow down in terms of growth, but I do think the fire has kind of been started in terms of consumer choice here.
And if I could just jump on there with that, I do think there's a barrier of entry with camping and RVing that once you've broken that, and I meet so many people who are like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know how to camp. I don't know what gear I need. I don't know where to get it. I don't know where to go. So once you have broken through that barrier, which I think a lot of people did this past year, then you're like, oh, I get this. This isn't that. It's not like other travel when you hop on a plane, you go to a hotel. We all know how to do that. But camping, there's a little more to it. So once you've broken through that, I think it's a little more accessible to people. And that's what I think this year has done.
I know from talking to all of you beforehand, I mentioned the notion of revenge travel, and it's not a term that everyone here was familiar with, but, we're talking about people returning to travel, this pent-up demand, willing to consider longer trips, perhaps more flexible durations. I mean, Jon, what do you think will make travellers consider RVs over more traditional forms of lodging? Is it that group family aspect that more groups traveling together now?
I mean, I think group and family is part of it. I think the bigger thing, though, is there's going to be more trips per traveler. I think a more flexible working environment, which is effectively inevitable at this point, is going to lead to more trips, more blending of business trips with leisure trips, which we've seen for years, but we've kind of seen that accelerate. More trips in which people are going to extend the duration and do some of the trip working remotely and some of the trip as leisure. I think all of those things are going to drive people to value types of travel. I think it's going to be very good for value airlines. I think it's going to be very good for vacation rentals, for, you know, camping and RVing, and potentially not great for very high-end resorts, for, you know, first class on airlines, for things like that, as people are looking to stretch the amount of days they can travel without stretching their budget proportionally.
And kind of a similar question to you, Sarah, because you know, the camping segment, you know, we're preaching to the choir here, but there's clearly the demand and the popularity for it. But how do you cater for those people who have varying degrees of experience within this segment? Oh.
I was saying it's a good question. And, you know, that's what our platform aims to do. We want to be a resource for all sorts of campers, no matter what your level is. And we're always striving to be better at that and learning from our users on what we could do to make that easier. So, you know, making sure that people have the knowledge that they need. We have a Dyrt digital magazine where we do a lot of articles on things, how you can camp and what you can look for. So really trying to make our platform be something that can meet the camper where they are, whether they're an experienced backcountry camper, been doing this for years, or you're a first-time camper who didn't grow up in a family that camped and you have no idea how to start. So I think that's really important.
And, you know, Kate, here we talked as well, you know, what is authentic glamping? There's so many different definitions and varieties of it, but, you know, from the work that you're doing here in the UK, what do you think is important when it comes to, you know, being immersive and close to the environment? What do you see as being the benefits of that?
The benefits for the guest, the benefits for the operator.
Both, however you wish to say it.
Well, it kind of repeating what I said earlier, really, is that I think it's part of, you know, is part of human nature to well, not everybody. I do know somebody actually who would like to live in a high-rise flat and never interact with nature at all, but I think they're you know, they're quite unusual, aren't they? People like that. I think it's, you know, it's fresh air. It's the sounds, it's the smells, it's the sunlight, it's the clouds, it's the breeze on your skin. It's all of these super, super simple things. I mean, I wrote a blog about 5 years ago. I discovered this word called rewilding, and it was talking about people getting back out with nature and wild swimming. And I was in one marketing meeting. I used to run a glamping agency for a few years, and the marketing lady came up from London and she said, "Oh, I've got this fabulous idea for a blog and we need to make a big thing about this. It's barefoot walking." And I sat at the end of the table and I thought, what the, are we really that disconnected from the natural world that barefoot walking is a thing that we need to make a big thing about in our marketing campaign? And this is where I started to realize I had just the best childhood, because I grew up in a small holding, you know, and ran around barefoot. I'm sitting here barefoot now, actually. First thing I did this morning was get out on the grass without any, you know, so I don't know. I think for people like me, it's second nature, really. It's how we live. And then you forget that it's not how everybody lives. And that's why I think all of us here on the panel are passionate about what we do, really, because we want to help other people to reconnect and have, you know, have that sort of, I mean, if I can get any kids out there to enjoy what I did when I was a child, then, you know, I'll retire a happy lady, frankly, because this is what it's all about. We, you know, we need the planet more than the planet needs us. So yeah, I think that's why it's important.
Yeah, and touching on that, you know, we're coming up to what is still kind of uncertain summer over here with the travel corridors opening up,
yeah,
red lists, etc. So
yeah,
if, I mean, we expect to see some sort of staycation boom, perhaps. Maybe you'll agree, maybe you'll disagree, but how do you think glamping businesses, etc., can kind of maximize bookings from staycations in this summer? Are there any tips you would you share with us?
To do it this summer really to put anything in place this summer might be a little bit short notice really, but I think given if they're already up and running, it could go one way or another really. Say there are countries opening up now that are safe to visit to, and people are sort of there's a term for it which right now I can't remember what it is, but they're booking 2 or 3 holidays at once and then cancelling one at the last minute if that country opens up or if it closes down to travel. So I've noticed I've got a Facebook group with over 4,000 people in it, and a lot of my glamping site owners and clients are saying, no, we're having cancellations left, right and centre, and also in the holiday cottage sector as well. So I don't know, honestly, I'm not quite sure at this stage what anybody can do to maximise on it, because you're either in a good place already or you're not. You've either got your act together, you've got a good business model, you know, you've sorted out your guest experience, you've got a cracking website that's easy to navigate and easy to book, or you haven't. And at this stage of the game, you know, it's probably a little bit late to sort of put any big faults wrong. But, you know, great customer service, great meet and greets, make sure your photographs are up to speed, just, you know, just basic stuff really. And give your guests a great experience, something that they go home, you know, just sitting there that maybe, or maybe not sitting at the desk on a Monday morning, but, you know, wistfully looking back thinking, oh, do you know, that was just the best break. I love the phrase, they thought of everything. I think if you can do that for your guests, you're on to a winner.
I think Clive Bishop in the chat there is the term you were looking for, hedge booking there?
It was, hello Clive. Yeah, it was Clive that mentioned it to me actually. I think it was, I can't remember. What did he say? Hedge booking. Hedge booking, hedging their bets. Thanks, Clive. Yeah, that was it, yeah.
Later.
Can I add one thing on this, which is to just say, remember as a travel operator of any sort, that we're in the business of enabling people to make great memories. And a big part of that starts with, you know, all of the things that Kate just mentioned, providing a great experience, all of those types of things. But one of the things that I think this pandemic has taught us is one of the best things we can provide our customers with is flexibility. I think we, you know, had gotten as a travel industry kind of lost our way a bit in terms of cancellation fees and things of that nature. And, you know, I think even when you hear people talk about hedge bookings now, they talk about it very negatively because, you know, well, we don't know whether this booking is real or not. But put yourself in the shoes of the consumer who you're serving there. They just want to go on a great holiday and they don't know if that holiday is going to materialize. So they require the flexibility to, you know, they're just trying to make a great trip for their family this summer. And we need to kind of, you know, somebody said this earlier, and I think it's a great figure of speech for it. We need to meet them where they are to be a partner in helping them build great memories. And that's one of the things I want, or I hope that the travel industry doesn't lose sight of as we go back through this transition of getting back to normal.
Do you think that plays then into the kind of professionalization, the raising of standards in the RV space? I mean, we've mentioned before that more professional owners and property managers are coming into the space. You know, what do you see the end result of this being?
I think it does to some extent, but I also think that, you know, depending on the category, the large professional operations are just as bad as anyone else. I mean, the worst industry, if I asked you to name the worst industry for kind of nickel and diming with fees, everyone would say airline, right? And airlines are massive companies. There's no, you know, peer-to-peer airlines. So it, you know, professionalization doesn't necessarily lend itself to flexibility, but I think it definitely helps. And I think, you know, I mean, it's pretty basic, but it starts with the idea of we are here to serve travelers and provide them with outstanding memories. How do we go about doing that? By, you know, treating them as a partner in this experience and kind of beginning with how we'd want to be treated on it. For RVShare's part, we have, you know, actively pushed our supply base to become more flexible with cancellation policies and things of that nature. We've also, rewarded them for doing so in sort and things like that. So I do hope that, the marketplaces leverage their influence to help make travel more flexible, because I think, more flexible travel means more travel, which is ultimately good for all of us.
I'd be interested to know, Jon, if from your time at HomeAway, is there anything that you can, like any key points that you've taken away from that role that you've tried to apply in the RV space?
Yeah, a lot of them. I would say, a lot of the things between the two categories are quite similar. You have a supply base that existed but was largely untapped. I mean, people had second homes prior to Vrbo and Airbnb. They just were not particularly good at monetizing that asset. The same is true in the RV space, though the benefit of the bargain is actually much clearer and better in the RV space. Typically speaking, a vacation home is an appreciating asset, while an RV is a depreciating asset. An RV is typically used for about 3 weeks a year if you own it. So the ability to take that RV and turn it into a second source of income is pretty clear. And for people who list on RVShare, over half of them are able to cover all of their ownership cost by renting out through our platform. So, those are things that are pretty similar. I think, the idea of treating bookings as important as treating a booking as someone's family vacation is something that has been an evolution with our supply base that we're still working on, and, we're making great progress against. But the bigger, broader thing that is true of the RV space that was true of the vacation home space is the satisfaction is just through the roof, because people love having the space to spend time with the people who matter most to them and build great memories. And that's what we're in the business of doing. That's what really the entire short-term industry was built on the back of, was that, hotels have existed for many years, but they were not great at providing shared experiences in the forms of kitchens, in the forms of common areas, and really bringing groups and families together. That's something that short-term rentals excel at. That's something that, RV trips excel at. You hear people, look back at their childhood and their life. You hear Kate reminisce about running barefoot, on the sand. And that, always comes from being outside and going on trips like that. And, that's ultimately what we're selling. And it's a great product with really high satisfaction.
I'm seeing quite a lot of nodding there from Sarah as well. I mean, how do you think, I think it's quite a similar point, but how do you think maybe the camping industry and the work that you're doing at the Dyrt, how is the sector aiming to be more accessible and indeed maybe inclusive if there are any issues associated with that? Yeah.
And I've alluded to a little bit already, but I grew up camping. So for me, it was a natural part of my life. And I never thought I wouldn't camp. But for a lot of people in this country, they didn't grow up camping and it wasn't an option. And they don't see people camping in the communities that they grew up in. And, I think the outdoor industry in general, has been struggling with a lack of diversity, especially in the last year. So making sure that there are opportunities for everybody to camp or to know about camping and to feel like camping is something for them. And it's something that we're working hard at the Dyrt, to make sure that we are striving to be more inclusive, listen to our users, listen to our diverse communities within our user base. It's really important to us. And I think in the outdoor industry, there has been a little bit of, I alluded to it before, an intimidation factor. And that's true even in some of the retail stores you see in the US, where you don't even maybe want to go in because it's like, I don't belong to this community. I'm not a hardcore rock climber. I'm not a hardcore skier. I'm just a hiker and a camper, or I'm none of those things, but I'm interested in finding out more. So like just figuring out how to again, reach people where they are. And one thing we're doing at the Dyrt from kind of a marketing level, which is kind of, you know, a little bit off, but working with a lot of outdoor brands who are located in places that aren't in these more hardcore outdoor retail stores, like products that are sold in grocery stores and gas stations and pharmacies, where everyone goes, so that they have an opportunity to see these products and see the dirt associated with these products, and maybe it opens up a new possibility to people.
I refer back to our context page at the start. We're seeing huge rounds of investment now in these RVShare, for example, the camping and glamping companies. So, you know, Jason, from your perspective, you know, what do you think? You mentioned particularly the sort of concept of RVs, self-storage, etc. You know, what is attractive about these verticals, you know, in your mind?
Yeah, so for us, I think my interest or my thesis is a little bit different. But again, I think this is what I was trying to say earlier. The folks touched on is you know, it comes down to that adoption. And it's not just RV, you know, it's any kind of consumer experiences, technology. And we see it most recently, the most relevant is probably with Airbnb, that when it first started, everybody's like, what? Like, I'm staying in a stranger's home? Like, do they have bed bugs? Like, are they going to kill me? You know, and having those assurance or building out that ecosystem, right? Booking platform like Jon is doing, the review system that Sarah is doing. Overall, it will help the adoption, that people try it and go, oh wait, yeah, no, I can do this. You know, I have other experiences to try out. For us, I mean, we have some other investments, or we have vacation rentals as well that we book out, which has just been nuts this year. I literally, like, there are people begging me to stay at our places, and we're just like, no, we can't get housekeeping. So for our interest, we're actually in the RV storage aspect of it, because there's, you know, less involved, less customer support we have to deal with, or unhappy customers, and the infrastructures of building out the actual, say, the A-frames or the camps and infrastructures that you have to bring with it, water, utilities, sewer, those type of things. We're just interested in the storage part of it, where people that are in urban or semi-urban, as they bought, you know, RV, some people might have places to park them, some people don't, or just a personal choice because of aesthetic, or their wife is telling them to get that monstrosity of a thing out of the driveway. We do see, I think, again, looking at the macro picture or staying ahead of the trend, that is something also part of the ecosystem that people are going to need, that, you know, whether maybe they don't have a place to park, or a partnership with companies like Jon's, where, you know, we're essentially keeping their inventory, or portion of their inventory, and when people need them, they go there to park, or their actual facility, so they can, you know, welcome them, walk them through how an RV works, those type of things. And I think it's more hands-off, and it's less competitive than a lot of self-storage or hotel. Like, I think in terms of a risk-adjusted basis, it make a lot of sense to us.
I know you're more from the kind of urban residential traditional background, but you know, do you see the investment landscape in the short-term rental space changing long-term? Is there going to be more investment going into these camping, glamping, leisure-type companies away from urban, or, you know, do you see a split? What direction do you see that going in, perhaps?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely, for sure. You know, there's also whenever something's hot, right, there's going to be investments, or people trying to follow that or chase that. And I do believe in the long-term viability or trend of this. So I think it would be interesting too. I think some of these investments maybe help accelerate that, or you know, cutting down some of the barriers for adoptions in the future as well.
And Kate, I'll turn back to you. Here in the UK, what sort of buildings or properties do you see maybe catching the attention of investors, for example, Jason?
I've seen quite a lot of investors hop across from urban developments into rural. We have a new word for it, a new phrase for it called natural capital assets, don't you know? Another one along there is rewilding, and you know. So yeah, there's a lot of people looking at, if they haven't got the land already, they're looking at buying land. I'm working with a hotel group that are buying up rural hotels and developing the grounds. The glamping side of it is a really big part of the business model, and the revenue generation of the development. So I know I think we both know Jim at the show, and I met a lot of investors at the show in London that were, and this was pre-COVID, had a very keen eye on the rural leisure sector, for want of a better phrase, and that would include accommodations as well. So I think there's a lot of people looking at this. What buildings in particular they might be looking for. I think they build, if it's not an existing building, you know, and that's the beauty of glamping really, is you can create something that's much less of an investment than buying a hotel or something already and converting it. So, you know, the actual investment is lower, and very often if you get the experience right, the rental fees are higher. So, you know, it's a bit of a no-brainer really in terms of return on investment. But what particular buildings they'd be interested in, Paul, hard to say, because, you know, in Britain we've got so many different buildings, from lighthouses to barns and tithe barns and shacks and sheds and all sorts of stuff. I mean, you can turn anything into a leisure development, can't you? Well, I could anyway. You know, it's great what's going on in here. Yeah, so there's a lot of people jumping across from traditional sort of urban property investment to this new natural capital assets investment.
And Jim will be very happy to have got a shout out for you there, Kate. Sorry, there, so we can put his details in the chat perhaps.
And Paul, if I could just jump in real quick, just to jump on what Jason was saying. You know, as a founder of a company, the level of inbound interest we've had from investors in the past 6 months, and we've been very capital efficient. We have not raised the sort of money a lot of our competitors have, but the interest coming in now is nothing I've experienced in the 8 years of doing this. So, you know, it seems like there's definitely something happening out there.
Yeah, do you think perhaps that the interest in the camping segment, perhaps moving kind of onto this overarching theme of this webinar, but do you think it's moving away from being what some might consider a niche segment or alternative?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this last week, and it's hard for me maybe because it's never been a niche thing for me. It's always been a part of my life. So it's hard for me to take an outsider perspective, but I do think I would be interested to hear Jon's view on this as well, but I do think it's becoming much more mainstream.
I was going to say, Jon, do you want to sort of pop in?
Definitely what we've seen. That's what our ambitions are. You know, my team and I aren't here to build a small business that, you know, is only looking at a very niche piece of the travel industry. We believe this is a mainstream category of travel. We believe at scale, the big winners here are consumers, because ultimately we've created a marketplace that connects them with a better way to get around the world for the types of use cases in travel that are great for RVing. And, you know, to Sarah's point, there's a ton of investment interest in the category right now. That's a good thing, because it means it's a good category. That will also, you know, bring a lot more light to the category, which I think is important for awareness and consideration. I think, you know, one of the things that got people comfortable with, you know, to what Jason said earlier, staying in an Airbnb, you know, does it have bed bugs? Is the person going to kill me? Is that, you know, billions of dollars in capital was being flushed into it, right? if that happens, then it's probably not a, you know, dangerous thing. And that credibility that is lent by, you know, a lot of the investors that you're seeing get into this category, I think is a great harbinger for where we're going.
And you say that as a company that raised over $100 million October, am I right in thinking? So what makes you particularly excited about this segment moving forward over the next couple of years?
Well, I mean, I think we're in a really fun time in this segment where it's emerging, where, you know, you're starting to see it be talked about kind of on the edge of mainstream travel. And we expect it to fully come into the lens of what is mainstream travel. So, I mean, that's the fun part, building through that time and that scale life cycle in a category and in a business, I mean, to me is incredibly fun. So, I mean, that's what I'm most excited about. And again, you know, ultimately we're making travel better in giving more choices to people to, you know, to make great trips for themselves and their families. So, I mean, to me, that's why I like to come to work every day.
And particularly, I know on short-term rentals at the moment, you know, we are covering a lot of new companies emerging and some raising capital like your own. So we certainly will be interested and we'll be covering all of the latest news on short-term rentals and exploring these trends a lot further over the coming years. So stay tuned for that, everyone. Jason, looking forward as well as our investor, you know, where do you see the main opportunities for investment in the short-term rental sector? Do you think urban dwellers maybe are going to look beyond you know, the more typical type destinations to vacation in future years?
Yeah, that's I gotta think about that a little bit. I mean, to be honest, I think John's the space I would want to be in next. Like we're talking about the adoption or barriers to entry. Not a lot of people have $100,000, $200,000 to plunk down on an RV. So if this is the mode of transportation or travel that they decide for themselves, you know, I think that is the next biggest roadblock to address. And I think this is part of the goes in line with our thinking is like, you know, again, a lot of people bought RVs during COVID. They want to use it during COVID, but post-COVID, maybe they won't use it as much. And they go, well, you know, this thing is just costing money. Why don't I try to list it to make a little bit of money off of it, right? Like similar to what we're talking about, the vacation rental aspect where there's, sorry to use like academic nerdy terms, but essentially there's excess capacity that need to be eaten up somehow. I think to me that is the most interesting part of it. And similar to Airbnb, again, there will be just plethora of adjacent markets to go into, whether it's you know, other excursions or experiences that once you get to the glamping side, I do foresee some maybe growth in the RV maintenance aspect of it. For example, for folks that are not familiar, or the accessory or those kind of market for folks that are not familiar in the US. Camping Worldwide, it was a stock that was been on our radar. It went from something like like $4 to $40. Just because, you know, that growth in sales of as you get an RV, you also happen to need, you know, bungee cords and a mini fridge and this and that, you know. I think ultimately you want to think about putting yourself in the consumer's shoes, like as where are people going to spend money?
I guess that follows on really from what Sarah was talking about with accessories, and you know, Sarah, do you see that as being something that you're leading a path to that others maybe will follow?
Yeah, and I don't want people to think the only way, you know, if you want to go in an RV, I'm glad there are companies like John's where you can try it before you purchase it. But, you know, I don't want, my fear is that people will think that camping is something they can't do because they don't have the money to do it. And part of the reason I grew up camping is we didn't have the money to do it. So we had a really cheap tent and a really, cheap other stuff. So I always want camping to be something that's accessible to people wherever you are, and know that there are many, many ways to camp, all the way to a fancy, beautiful RV with a shower to a very simple tent. So that's, one thing I just want to keep in mind, that there's so many different ways to enjoy the outdoors.
I'm going to grant the last words to Kate here. You've been waiting patiently, I know. So how difficult do you think it is to judge, how mainstream glamping is now? Because we've said, and one of the threads about this discussion is there's quite a lot of variability between what we see in the UK and the US and other parts of the world. Where maybe do you see the growth of this segment coming?
Oh God, that's a killer question. Goodness me. Okay, we've got 3 minutes. Thanks for that, Paul. Love you too. Here in the UK, the growth is, the glamping industry has been going 16, 17, 20 years now. It's really developed quite rapidly over the last, I've seen it develop over the last sort of 5 to 7 years. And we're seeing it going much more mainstream and a less niche, but there's some polarization involved as well. So we've got big theme parks adding hundreds of units that they're calling glamping, or holiday parks are adding pods and calling it glamping. And I know people in the industry that have been in it for many years, and they take great offense at that, because to them it's not glamping. You ask 10 people in the industry what glamping is and you'll get 10 completely different answers. So
I think I maybe could have worded it slightly differently there.
Yeah, try that. Let's try again.
But we sort of describe glamping in the UK perhaps being more, or in the US it's more traditional. I know we mentioned Under Canvas. Is it a company you work with? So
yeah,
the US learning from the UK perhaps, or
I don't think so, actually. I think the US and the Americas in general are taking glamping and really owning it and making it their own. So I wrote about Under Canvas, actually, my first article for an American magazine about 3 months ago. So I'm very familiar with Under Canvas. And again, they do seem to have embraced the real outdoors experience. So it's, tents and canvases, and whereas here in the UK, and climate plays a big thing in this, doesn't it? Of course, we don't have the climate that Arizona has and what have you. So, we've sort of resorted to our Celtic traditions, and we've started to eke towards more, I hesitate to use the word permanent, but, timber structures and things like that. So that's where we're shifting. There's been a massive shift towards timber structures over the last 3 or 4 years. Then we've had COVID, and people just don't care at the moment. They just want to get out and have a break. So there's been bell tent sites popping up everywhere. I mean, everywhere. I could stick a bell tent in my garden here on the outskirts of Glastonbury and rent it out for 120 quid a night this summer if I really wanted to. It's just gone bonkers, really. But America has taken it and making it, they've stuck true to glamping as being a proper, the barrier between the inside and the outside is very thin. It's usually canvas, and people get that immersive experience with nature. So whether or not America will catch us up in a few years, and then they'll think, well, we've done all of this canvas stuff, so let's have a look at cabins. Because you've got the pioneer tradition out there, and those really cute cabins with the log, the fires and everything. But over here, I think we've got a big surge in tents at the moment. I think it'll settle down again in a couple of years when travel opens up again and people can get on a plane. They will, because the Brits do like to have a holiday abroad and get some sun. I know it's very sunny here at the moment, and that is the real sun, by the way. I'm not faking this. But we do like a holiday abroad, and we'll get on a plane, so it will settle down eventually. Where America's going to go, I don't really know, but they've made it their own. I'll say that for them. Well done, guys.
Well, thank you very much, Kate, and of course,
no problem.
All of our contributors today, to Jon, to Sarah, and to Jason. Fantastic discussion. So I'll just sort of finish off with a few closing remarks here. So we're going to be back in 4 weeks' time on Tuesday the 29th of June with the next RockStrz session and that's on the principal threats and opportunities facing the short-term rental industry. The sign-up details will be in the chat shortly. You can contact me at paul@internationalhospitality.media. Again, that's been posted in the chat already, if you'd like to contribute to any of our upcoming webinars. And we're really looking forward to our inaugural in-person Urban Living Festival that's taking place in London at Tobacco Dock on the 7th to the 8th of July 2021. And you can check out more information on our exhibitors, sponsors and partners at urbanlivingfestival.com. I can see that's in the chat now, and we're really grateful for everyone's support on that. For sponsorship opportunities, please do get in touch with my colleague Katie. Her details are on the screen for you now. A big thank you to our series sponsor Nuki and our session sponsor Point Central for their support. Feel free to contact us via our various channels. So all that's left for me to say is thank you again, everyone, for listening, to all of our speakers, again, which I've mentioned. Thank you again, and we'll see you all very soon. Thank you very much for your time.